good. I'm well, thank you. So first, as Dr. Usher said, this is my independent study research project. I've been interested in education ever since I took Intro to Education 1 in my fall semester of my junior year. And during that time in the class, we just learned about different aspects of education, whether that be the laws, different philosophies. And one thing we did in particular that I was quite fond of is classroom observations. And I went in and I actually looked after with Mr. Lentz during his first year of teaching, and getting to be in there and seeing how it all kind of happens, how you develop a lesson, and it all kind of accumulated with me actually giving a lesson in his class. And of course with his guidance and help, because I've never done this before. And when I did the lesson, it was one of the most amazing things that I've ever done. And I fell in love with it right there. And so I went up to Dr. Martin, who is the instructor of that class, and I said, I would like to continue this, and I don't know if there's enough students retaking the class. She said no. I said, okay, well, how about an independent study? She said, sure. So we sat down and we developed this curriculum of 3 weeks of me learning different philosophies, 3 weeks of learning how laws are passed in education. Well, we didn't do any of that. And that comes from Dr. Rauscher with the idea of me doing research. And she got the idea from watching John Hattie speak at Visible Learning. And Dr. Barn brought up to me like, hey, student voice, do you want to do it? I was like, well, let me think about it. So I was sitting there and I was thinking about how I'm vocal about my own opinions in school and how I take control of my learning and I express my views on education. So I was like, yeah, this is really important to me. And here we are. So this is, can you hear me now? All right, now, as I said, people have done student voice way before I have. This is not any new concept that I've come up with. The people before me, as I mentioned before, John Hattie is one. He did a meta-analysis over 1,000 studies in which he found that there are 195 influences in student achievement. And on a scale, he found that 0.40 equals 1 year growth, which all instructors choose to strive for. Interestingly enough, he found that teacher-student relationships can have an effect size of 0.72, which is almost double the growth a student can have in 1 year. His famous quote, or saying, is know thy impact, and that is connecting what we do as educators to what happens to learners. The next is Peter DeWitt. Peter is an author of his blog, Finding Common Ground, and he's made several books, one being Dignity for All, which he's an author and he expresses his views and he expresses the LGBT community in education and school climate change. Here's a nice little quote for him saying, all students should have their moment where they feel listened to, are respected for their voice, and chosen for something they never thought possible, but we helped them achieve. The final I would like to talk about is Russ Qualia. Russ is the author of the book Student Voice, in which he discussed his study of the Student Voice Survey, which he surveyed over 66,000 students from 6th to 12th grade. And he found in his study that 47% of students felt that they had a voice in their school, 52% said teachers are willing to learn from them, 46% felt like they were a valued member of their school community, and 66% said they were comfortable asking questions in their class. So that means out of 30 students, 20 feel comfortable asking questions, while the other 10 do not. Now the purpose of the study was to understand how students view and perceive education and learning, and to offer educators in this area insight to their own population. So my selection process for the study was pretty basic. I tried to make it as objective as I could, to make it the most random. And what we did was, we got homeroom lists from every grade of all homerooms. And let's say for all freshman classes, I picked the numbers 5 and 9. And I would highlight those names, and we would put them in a Google spreadsheet. And from there, we printed them out, and we cut them up and put them in a cup. And I drew 10 names from each grade. It was painful, but it was the most random, objective-based selection that I could possibly have. Right. So 40 participants were selected, 10 from each grade, and 37 participants were interviewed, 3 not wanting to, or they decided that it was not in their best interest, or they felt uncomfortable with the interview process. So, and when we broke it down by percentages, the participants did represent the building demographic in terms of race, ethnicity, and gender. Now, in the interview process, we had to vet the questions. Okay, so there was, whenever we come up with questions, we always want to kind of put them through to somebody. So first, I went to Dr. Rauscher. I said, these are my questions. What do you think? She said, okay, cool. So then I go to Mr. Mellon. I was like, these are my questions. What do you think? And he's like, they're okay. Oh, okay. And then I went up to two outside educators, and that was Peter DeWitt and Russ Quaglia. And I said, these are my questions. They said, these are wonderful questions. You just have to reword them a little bit. And so I also got that from mock interviews, where I had two peers from my grade, both a male and a female. They answered the questions, and they told me to reword the first question. Okay. And then after, I finally went over with Dr. Martin, and that is our final list of questions. The questions are, when you picture learning, what do you see? Does learning look different in different classes? If yes, how so? What strategies help you learn? And when you struggle with learning, what strategies help you learn? What is one thing you wish your teachers knew about your learning? So here are some limitations of my research. I could only interview 37 out of 800 plus students. I was limited to one high school, and we have a very limited diversity within the school's population. Also, I'm a peer of the participants. Therefore, that could, for knowing me for so many years, they might have said their answers in a way that they think that I would find pleasing. Here are some of the themes that were found from each question. The first is when you picture...
Brandon, were these written questions, or did they speak these? Were these oral answers?
I asked them the questions, and then they responded orally.
Okay, all right.
When you picture learning, what do you see? And most students said a classroom with a teacher in the front of the room with a textbook on the desk. Very few answered the second option, or not option. The next main theme was one-on-one learning. Does learning look different in different classes? If yes, how so? 100% of students said yes. Learning does look different in different classes. However, it does depend on the two areas of teacher style and content. What strategies help you learn? These are very traditional methods of note cards, flashcards, note-taking, and memorization. When you struggle with learning, what strategies do you use? The more contemporary methods of internet and YouTube came up often, and then the very traditional of asking for help from a teacher or peer. Now the last question, it's really interesting, the responses that I got from what is one thing you wish your teachers knew about your learning. One of the themes that came up was that students don't know. They've never been asked this question before. They don't know how to respond. And actually many of them were puzzled and were just surprised I asked that question. The few that did answer brought up the theme of hands-on learning. So now what? I have this, we had this excellent data, okay, and I could have stopped there. I could have started analyzing and just seeing what else, maybe making, going further in depth. But the thing is, in terms of student voice, it's more about asking questions. There is a next step. So when we Skyped with Russ Quaglia, he brought up this idea of a focus group, saying, okay, give these students some time to think and reflect about what they answered, and then try and bring them back together. Okay, but he told me to make sure that you ask them questions like, what can you as a student do to make a difference? Okay, because he told me it was very important to bring a full circle back to the student of making the student being responsible for what they learn. And the only difficulty we had was getting students together. Okay, I cannot get all 37 students, as they are being from different grades at different classes, out of class at one time. So I took 2 days and had to go and get them, and what they did was, instead of me asking them these questions orally and taking the interview process, I just had sheets of paper with the questions, and they wrote down their responses. The first is, what do you wish teachers knew about your learning? And this is very similar to the first time we asked, what is one thing you wish your teachers knew about your learning? Now, the reason why, since this was a difficult question to answer the first time about, I wanted to give students the opportunity to answer it again. And here's some of the quotes taken directly from the paper. Depending on the subject, I learn slower, and sometimes I don't understand things for a while. Sometimes I get scared to ask for help, even though it's your job. We all struggle and get very frustrated and have bad days. We are teens, but give us a little break and try to look at it from our point. Just because I tend to pick up on things quickly, it doesn't mean I always do. And it is helpful when they can clarify things for those times I don't. I learn slower than some people. If I don't understand something, I get frustrated. But do not give up on me, or I'll give up on myself. The next question is, what do you expect teachers' classes to be like? A place where you can freely ask questions. Teachers should be excited, enthusiastic about the content they are teaching while maintaining a friendly environment, that is. And the third is caring, understanding, encouraging, and trying new ideas and approaches to different subjects. What do you want teachers to do differently? Look at how receptive the class is to a subject and base further learning off of that. It would be nice if teachers would be more flexible to what the students need and want. For example, if the students collectively don't understand a topic, don't move on to another unit. Continue and help the students to understand. Get to know your students and their mental health. What can you, as a student, do differently to change what learning looks like? This was, now that they have answered and thought about what others could do for them, bringing the responsibility back to them as their own learners. Don't expect teachers to have to hand feed you everything. You have to put in the work since you are the one learning. Actually engage in classroom discussions. And have the courage to go ask for help from a certain teacher. Never be afraid to ask. We're going to go to Russ Qualia and how he summarizes student voice. My takeaway from the study. Okay, many students do not believe they have a voice. Many students have ideas about how to control their own learning. And many students want to be more involved in their learning. Now for me, as someone who's not an educator, this was surprising to hear, because myself, I have been so apt to do all of these things. And then to see my peers not feel the same, it was really eye-opening. You see, I have known most of these students my entire life, my school life, and I found out things that I never knew about them. I mean, some of them I went, we played football together, or some of them we have been best friends since we were 5. And it started making me think, if I don't know these things, how could educators possibly in just 1 year of time? And thought, well, imagine what teachers might learn if they asked students these kind of questions. So as I leave you with that final thought, thank you very much for allowing me to present in front of you. I hope that something is useful for you guys. And thank you for being a wonderful staff that we have here, and for sitting and reflecting and thinking. It means a lot to me as a student, and I know if the other students really knew, they would really be appreciative as well. So, thank you very much.
Brandon, are you willing to take questions if there are any?
Absolutely.
Questions, comments?
Specifically as a student, what do you think teachers should be doing more of beyond asking these questions to kids to give them involvement in their learning?
Simple questions.
In terms of getting involved with their learning, one thing is that a lot of students pointed out was the idea of hands-on learning, and that it's being really engaged with what they're doing. And interestingly, that surprised me that was one of the huge themes I got out of, what is one thing you wish your teachers knew about your learning the first time? I thought I would never have to hear that again. So from what I gathered from the students, it would just be try to find new and creative ways to go approach a lesson, even though I know sometimes due to time restraints, that's a very difficult thing to do, especially taking time to really dive into something and go at it from different aspects. But that would be, from what I gathered, that would be the first step that I would take.
Other questions or comments?
Well done.
Kind of an informal, opinion-based question, but based on the interviews and the time you spent with those 37 students, do you get the sense that those students who participated have a greater awareness to, or may actually ask some of these questions going into this coming year, and maybe kind of start maybe laying the groundwork for that culture within the student body?
For some, I would say that especially when we went to this focus group, I mean, that was months of break between me interviewing the students and then them answering the focus group questions. They all did take a different mindset approach to now that they have thought about it and they are more aware. Now, some of them were very introverted in nature, and I do not believe that those students will try to ask the same questions. However, some of them were, as I know, are very extroverted people who do have opinions, and hopefully they do ask these questions to their peers.
I would also just point out, any of you who are in the master's cohort or who are thinking about that in the future, or even just want to take on your own action research, this is a beautiful model of the process. And those of you who've been through it probably were going like, oh yeah, I know that part, I know that part, I recognize that part. So really, or if you aspire to doctoral work at some point, again, it's the same pieces, very much so. Thanks again, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.